moment we love.
So here I am, leading another service with the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. If I count up the times, it comes to at least a half a dozen. I may have to apply for standing with the UU Ministers Association, except that that is not my intention. I stand here and I do everything that I do around USR because I believe in who we are, what we stand for, and what we do in the community. And I want to help out. It's my contribution. Most of you know that I am a retired Presbyterian minister, but you don't know my theology because we don't much talk about theology around here. I've been a Universalist all my life, refusing to believe in a God who was less loving than the average parent, or to accept any religion's claim to exclusive truth. Whatever salvation might mean, and we'll talk about that in a moment, it must be available to all who are willing to accept love and forgiveness. And I've been a Unitarian officially since Janice and I signed the book in 2019, but informally for much, much longer. Before I claimed Thich Nhat Hanh as my teacher, I saw Jesus and the Buddha as equally human and equally divine, in the same sense that each one of us contains seeds of humanity and divinity. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, I have an image of Jesus and of the Buddha on my meditation stand, and I consider them both to be my spiritual ancestors. And when it comes to theism, I suspect I'm closer to those of you who call yourselves atheists in rejecting traditional concepts of God. I'm more in line with the process theology of Rabbi Brad Artson, Dean of Rabbinic Studies at the American Jewish University in Los Angeles. When I was serving as a pastor and someone tried to shock me by proclaiming themselves to be atheist, I would respond by saying, "Tell me about the God you don't believe in. I suspect I'm an atheist." In the end, whatever our theories about theology, the beautiful community of USR is our shared commitment to humanity. I say all of this because it feels like the right time and place. This is the last service that I plan to lead for some time. As you know, I was elected vice president for USR last June with the expectation, barring an insurrection, that I will become president in July of this year. And I don't want to confuse the roles of preacher and president. But more importantly, I hope that speaking a little bit about where I'm coming from will moderate some of your projections that you might be making onto me when you think the words Presbyterian minister. I'm not that, whatever that is. I'd like you to have a more realistic target if you are inclined to be angry or fearful about where I might try to lead the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood when I serve as president. Now that I've said all that, let me pause. Are there any comments or questions? Thank you. Reserve the questions for later. Okay. I look forward to the conversation. Yes. What is a testimonial? We are calling them testimonials when people talk about what USR means to them. So that's what we had from Delight, and that's what we'll have from Bill Kempe in a few moments. So let's talk about saving time, as in time-saving devices, or saving time, as in MC Hammer's Hammer Time. This is saving time. The question in my head is whether we can actually save anything. The time-saving devices that were so touted that scholars were debating what we were going to do with all of our leisure time, that the problem of leisure was something that, there were actual studies in the 1950s. There was a debate in the House of Lords in the 1960s about this problem. And it turns out that those devices have actually taken over our lives. There's a movement afoot these days to jettison them, but we won't go there right now. Reverend Sarah Lindsay and Reverend Peggy Clark do a regular podcast called Hope and Heresy. I recommend it as a way to get our minister, to get to know our minister better in a different context. I was inspired to my topic today by the confluence of daylight savings time, Purim, and a recent episode of Hope and Heresy entitled Soteriology, or the subject of salvation. They talk about it at length, and I recommend that you listen. They talked about how our universalist views undermine traditional visions of heaven and hell, and therefore question the need for salvation. They agreed that there is still a place for redemption, for affirming that second chances are possible, for restorative justice, for rehabilitation. But that's not granted, in our view, by a divine savior. It's a gift we humans give to each other. Reverend Sarah said we owe it to each other. And Reverend Peggy said this: if I'm going to critique liberal religion, I'm going to say we don't do that well. We talk about redemption, but I would actually argue that we're not so good at it. We don't forgive each other so quickly. We can be pretty intense. I think we struggle with redemption for each other. So in this brief meditation, that is my saving time thesis. Having got rid of hell, liberal universalists may be in danger of forgetting that we still need forgiveness, redemption, healing of relationships. A humanist theory of salvation could help us to be more gracious and forgiving with each other. As I said about the festival of Purim, it reminds us that human agency, human courage, and maybe a little holy coincidence can change the world. You and I are not hoping for or praying for divine intervention. If the world is going to be a better place, it's up to you and me, just as it was up to Esther and Mordecai. Now, I've told a few of you that if I could live at any time in history, it might be 1893, the year that USR was founded. But I would choose to be living in Chicago. Think gleaming alabaster cities of the world's Columbian Exposition. Think in particular of the World Parliament of Religion that took place at the Columbian Exposition. Think Jane Addams and Hull House. And think the height of the social gospel. Just please don't think about the panic of 1893. That's another story. And please don't read Reason Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition by Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, and others. It's the Parliament of Religion that draws me to that time and place. Today, the Pluralism Project at Harvard calls the Parliament of Religions the expression of a distinctive solution to the growing awareness of religious diversity and the problems that it posed, both in America and in the world. That solution was an all-embracing universalism that envisioned a coming together of the great religions of the world. Now, was the Parliament dominated by Christians? Yes. Was it run by and catered for whites? Yes. Was it naive in hoping for a universal religion? Yes. Still, the vision of a possible reconciliation and a shared redemption can inspire us today. So today I want to lay that vision before you in the form of a challenge. I ask you this: If we have a hard time making space for grace amongst ourselves, how might we hope to be a healing place for strangers? If newcomers see us coming down hard on each other for something we said or did or unmindfully expressed, how will we be perceived? If humanism doesn't have a robust practice of redemption, how do we believe transformation takes place? We share a covenant here at USR, and that covenant can help us to address these issues. I know we're not a creedal church, we don't recite creeds, but would you be willing to read the USR covenant out loud? I'm delighted that Kathy Smolin, a member of the Committee on Shared Ministry, which developed the covenant, is here to lead us. And Kathy, if you would come on up and help us to do this. I might ask you to stand to make this commitment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just like to remind you, this covenant was adopted and approved by the congregation in June 2021 at the annual meeting. Led by our shared Unitarian Universalist values, committed to the search for truth, meaning, and justice, and determined to create a community of trust, warmth, and joy together with love, we covenant to support this congregation with our presence, gifts, and service, and to care for each other and the long-term well-being of our community. To listen deeply to one another in a spirit of openness, acceptance, and trust. To speak and act with forethought, honesty, and compassion, considering not only the intent, but also the impact of our words and behaviors. To speak directly whenever safe to those with whom we have disagreements, and to encourage others to do the same, seeking assistance from leadership as needed. To include all people with gratitude for the differences among us, celebrating the richness of varied perspectives. To attend intentionally to dynamics of oppression and prejudice in our interactions with each other and in our congregational system. To participate in congregational votes and decisions, engaging in thoughtful dissent and respecting our democratic processes. To ask for and to extend forgiveness to each other if we break these promises. This covenant is a living document to which we can refer in our interactions with each other, reminding ourselves of our shared promises. It invites ongoing learning and courageous acts of love and reconciliation.